Hey folks, how are you? This is Amar Sheth at Sales for Life, and I want to welcome you to another edition of the Social Success Factor. I'm really happy to have Mario Martinez Jr. on the call with me today. Mario is a regional vice president of sales. Now, I wanted to take or started to take a bit of a different angle on these social success factor videos that I'm doing. I'm still going to continue to have very successful sales professionals, but I wanted to invite in the know, savvy sales leaders like Mario because social media, from their perspective, I want you to hear about it. So, Mario, thanks again. Welcome aboard, and I do appreciate your time.
Hey, Amar, thanks for having me. Super excited to be on with you guys.
Awesome. Now, Mario, I'm going to embarrass you just a little before we start. So,
Uh-oh.
Mario is an incredible social seller. He's, every organization has a few pockets of excellence. He is like the mountain of excellence at PGI, so where he works. And Mario is the Wayne Gretzky of social selling. So everyone should know that LinkedIn has a social selling index score, SSI for short, and Mario has a 99 out of 100 as his SSI score. So basically, he's on LinkedIn right now, typing away without us even realizing it.
Man, I appreciate that. That's a big reputation to live up to, the Wayne Gretzky on LinkedIn, man.
The
I'm
great one,
super
right?
excited about that. Thanks.
No worries. So, Mario, let's jump right in. My very first question for you today is, when I invited you on the show, I wanted to talk about the impact that social is having in the sales process. Talk to me about that impact. Is it top of the funnel? Is it nurture, middle of the funnel? Is it end of the funnel? Where are you seeing the impact of social today for you and your sales team?
That's a great question. So I would say, Amar, almost all stages of the sales development process, beginning, middle, and the end, there is absolutely no doubt that reps, sales representatives that are out there selling B2B definitely need to be looking at how to leverage social selling to be able to get into the offices of the lines of business that they're selling into. And then certainly no doubt throughout the entire sales process, your potential prospects or customers are doing an inordinate amount of research about your technology, your service, your platform, whatever that might be. And that's that middle of the ground. And then at the end, if they are like me, before they close the deal with somebody, they're always looking out to see who's this person I'm going to be doing business with, right? So I think from those three perspectives, beginning, middle, and end, social selling is definitely alive and well, and living and breathing in all three of those categories.
That's a great answer, Mario. Thank you. I have another question now, specifically around management. Okay,
Yeah.
um, what advice, and it could be strategic advice, tactical advice, but what piece of advice would you offer sales managers today and senior sales leaders like yourselves who are looking to embark on the social journey, or they're wondering how the heck do you bring this culture inside an existing traditional sales process? Because that's something you've had to contend with yourself, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, no doubt, even within the sales organizations that I've been part of, even the current one that I'm a part of, um, changing the way you do business and or conduct business to create opportunity uh, can be hard within an organization. Culturally speaking, you may have a process defined around an activity cadence or a cadence that you're following as a sales organization. But the key is, I think, from my perspective as a leader, I'm always looking out at how can we do more and crush our numbers, kill our numbers, and what are the trends that are taking place that aren't just a fad, trailing something, going after something in the wind here, but you're actually looking at something that has teeth.
Hmm.
And how do you go about as a sales leader implementing those things? My philosophy in general and just of sales leadership stems around that you can't just have the folks on the front line looking for opportunity. That sales leaders always need to be looking at how they can bring opportunities to their sales team to begin with. And so social selling is absolutely something that a sales leader, whether you're a manager, director, vice president, senior vice president, CEO, whatever the case might be in your role, is absolutely something that each of us as leaders can do and bring to the table and find those opportunities for our sales folks. So philosophically speaking, leaders need to be finding opportunities too. Because when you do that, you set the right tone for your sales organization. You're part of the team. You're with the team. You're doing the things that the team is doing as well. Maybe not as much, because that's obviously their job to carry that quota and carry that bag. But you're definitely doing those things to accomplish the end goal, which is sell. And with that comes the idea of what can I do behind the scenes or in the front lines outside of picking up the phone and calling people, like a cold call, or doing email blasts, which is what some sales reps do. And so that therein lies the ability to be able to leverage social selling and be out there front and center and in public and talking to potential buyers and prospects and customers in social media. So I would probably say, how do you deal with that? You got to change the mentality of what you as a leader bring to the marketplace, or to your individual market, and you've got to set the example. And the easiest way to be able to set that example is to be able to engage in social selling. And so, culturally speaking, you got to make the change.
So, so Mario, I'm going to paraphrase what you just said. You essentially are saying, as management, you have to jump in with 2 feet, because if you're not serious about it, why in the world would your reps even get serious, right? That's essentially what you're saying.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think the case in point is here, even within our own sales organization, adopting the idea behind social selling has taken some time. But after the last 8 months, we've been at it, and people are starting to pick up on how to go about doing that. So I walk out into the sales floor here at our San Francisco office at PGI, and just last night was a perfect example. Walked out, someone asked me a question about, hey, what do I do when I'm trying to engage with somebody with this particular article? And so I called the whole sales team over and said, let's talk about this. And you start asking questions, and really you start identifying with the sales folks, what's the idea behind getting out there with social selling? It's to engage with people. It's to engage with insights, to be able to advance your sales along, or to find that opportunity and to offer something of value to people who are looking for something. So we took the time. We got out there, the whole sales crew, took 30 minutes and did some time about how to construct information, how to construct data. So you got to lead by example. You got to be in the front. You have to be doing it. You cannot, in my opinion, develop a social selling program or culture or even begin on the process of social selling if you as a sales leader yourself are not engaged with social selling. It just will not work, because people follow people, and they're going to follow exactly what you're doing or not doing.
Yeah, great points. And I completely agree with you, because as leaders, you're setting the trend, and you have an existing infrastructure, a framework of management, and it's really powerful when something new like social comes into the mix, and the idea simply just can get reinforced, right? It's not going against the grain. Everything is smooth. It's an existing management process, etc. So I really appreciate that answer, Mario. I want to ask you something. There's been talk lately online about, before you invest and learn social selling, you should learn cold calling and traditional email first. Now, I've always thought that to enhance our probability of success in sales, it's better to familiarize yourself with all types of communications mediums, right? Why limit yourself to just the phone, just the email, or even just social? Because all 3 of those in a silo by themselves are suicide, quite frankly. So what are your thoughts on that? I want to get your take on that too.
That's a great question. I guess my answer would be, I don't know if it's like the chicken. What came first, the chicken or the egg, right? Which one do you learn first? Cold calling, email blasting, social selling. I guess thinking about that, I would probably say, just like exactly what you said. I'm not a believer that you can take one approach to your business and it be the end-all be-all. For example, I'm not a believer that you can just do cold calling and find success. I'm not a believer that you can just survive off of email blasts. I'm not a believer that you can just survive off of social selling. I do believe that the cold call is dying, but is not dead.
I agree.
And that is proven out in how our sales teams alone are generating opportunities which are coming from cold calling. And so I believe that what you need to do is you need to have a combination of all three components of the three. There's many things you can do, but the three things that I just mentioned: email blasting, cold calling, and social selling. You've got to incorporate that into your activity cadence as a leader and as an individual contributor to be able to be successful. Because you're going to find those buyers that are going to pick up the phone, which is happening in our sales organization. It happens day in, day out, and I see it. We've got opportunities in the funnel that are coming from cold calling. You're going to have those buyers that refuse to pick up their phone call, or a phone, excuse me, to take a phone call, but yet they'll read an email or an in-mail coming from LinkedIn. And then you're absolutely going to have those buyers that are part of your network or extended network out on social media, that as you're publishing data that is of value to them, it is going to attract them to say, hey, I probably should reach out to this individual and make some connection or have some discussion. Or as you're looking and finding people that you're trying to target, that you'll be able to see what's important to them out on social media and begin to engage with insights with those individuals. So I believe it's all three, and I believe that if you understand how to do calling, it will definitely help you with crafting and creating messaging towards social selling.
Yeah.
And vice versa. Whatever messaging that you're crafting, hopefully thinking like a customer in social media, is the same thing that will correspond to doing things like email blasts. So to me, in my mind, I would say they all merge together and go hand in hand.
Yeah.
And they mix. Yeah, absolutely, Mar.
Thanks for that. I want to talk a little bit, because you've gone down this path of social at your organization. I want to talk operationally about how important has marketing been, your marketing team been, to the overall success of your social selling program?
That's a great question. So I would say absolutely critical. I think in our marketing department, both the international side of our organization as well as the North America side, they've been engaged with helping to develop messaging that representatives can use out in the field. Because let's face it, some of us aren't writers, and some of us don't know how to be brief. Some of us don't have brevity inside of our blood. And so developing that targeted messaging, things that people can put out on social media, things that people can post, documentation that they can share, thought leadership discussions that they can engage with, are absolutely critical from the support of marketing. Can it be done as a standalone, as a lone wolf, as a sales organization? Yeah, I guess it could be done. But is it a much better partnership when it's done with marketing? Yeah, I would definitely agree that's probably the way to go. And where we've had the most success in social selling within our organization, marketing has been tied with sales in terms of helping to track activity, helping to push data, helping to develop messaging, and the sales folks are taking that and they're utilizing that, plus spinning it on their own. So I would say that we've definitely seen the partnership work best when it's that the results of social selling work best when there is a partnership.
It's a great point, Mario. And of course, I mean, I've been tracking the success that PGI has been having. And just for the audience listening, you may not know this, and this is public data, so I can share it with you. I hope, Mario, I hope you don't mind. But
yeah, go ahead.
PGI, in a very small social pilot, has already tracked over $1 million in revenue. So this stuff is very real that Mario's talking about. I mean, the cultural shifts, the marketing integration, the ability for management to stand as mentors inside an organization. I think these are all critical points, and they should hit the check mark of your organization if you're deciding to build a social program as well. Mario, I have one last question for you, and then we'll end because I've taken a lot of your time. If you were to give senior sales leaders 2 or 3 tangible tips on things they should look out for, what would those be if they're looking to start a social selling program themselves?
2 or 3 tips on things they should look out for if they're trying to start a social selling campaign themselves within the organization?
Yeah, because you've gone through it, right? So, I mean, I'm
Yeah.
sure you went through a lot of hurdles and missteps in the process. So guide the audience, because really they're going to be your peers watching this. What should
Yeah.
they look out for to avoid those same missteps and
Yeah.
potential missteps?
And as additional point, our organization is still going through it, right? So we're definitely not all the way through. But I think actually, Amar, probably the best number one piece of advice that I could give to sales leaders is a piece of advice that came from one of your peers within Sales for Life, and that was Jamie Shanks. One day, Jamie and I were talking, and he said, Mario, you have to remember that social selling is a marathon, not a sprint. And so I've utilized that, I don't know how many times within the organization, that uh, at a minimum, you're going to have to look at this as a long-term opportunity on how to fill and grow your pipeline. Is it possible that opportunities can begin happening within that first 30 days or 60 days as you get your organization starting to do the right things in social selling? Yeah, absolutely. It could be possible. But the biggest bang for your buck is going to take place around the 90, 120th day as you begin this process. And a lot of it has to do with adoption. So that would probably be the first thing I would say in terms of a piece of advice for sales leaders that are out there that are looking to roll out social selling campaigns or programs within their organization, is that it's a marathon, not a sprint. And that's really important, that you take that mindset and that you start getting adoption, as well as adoption of that view across the organization, as well as getting everybody's buy-in as they look at, maybe their spend that you're putting on for training, for tools, those types of things, is that it's a marathon, not a sprint. So that's piece of advice number one. Piece of advice number two is, shame on you as a sales leader if you are not leading the charge with social selling activities. Because what your sales organization will do is exactly what it is that you are doing or not doing. There may be pockets of a few folks here or there, and so this next comment is not to put anybody's, not to make me feel better or anything like that, but here at PGI, if you look at how much presence is taking place and how many views are taking place as a result of social selling, just on profile views alone. And that's not the best measurement of social selling, is getting profile views. But some of our leaders, like myself and Jeff Perkins, our vice president of online sales and global marketing, we're the number one and number two most commonly viewed profile in all of PGI worldwide. Right?
Wow.
So that is an example, and that's been like, I don't know, 6 months standing, whatever. It's been a long period of time as we started going down this process. So that's an example of leaders that are at the top. Highly engaged, absolutely. Yeah. And so what happened is just even alone on my team, if you looked at, on LinkedIn, and you look at, who's viewing what profiles on the top 100 within your organization, some of my own sales folks weren't even in the top 100. Well, in the last 60 days, several of the folks on my team alone have now entered into the top 3, top 5, now top 20. And so people are starting to follow that path. One, because we're competitive. Salespeople are just competitive. People want to be in the top most viewed profiles. But two, because they're seeing the example of what is being said. So that would probably be advice number 2, is you got to set the example and you got to take the time. And advice number 3, I think I said it earlier, be out there finding those opportunities. You bring something to the table and lead by example in terms of finding those opportunities. If someone bites on something that you've put out there, you've published, or you see someone has said something that you could jump on and engage with insight as a discussion, why not pick up the phone and call that individual after getting their permission? Or why not private message that individual to continue that conversation, to be able to nurture that potential lead into an opportunity and into close. And that's exactly the what we're doing here, is from a sales leadership perspective, is when we can have that opportunity, do it. And so those are probably the 3 pieces of advice that I would give, man.
That great pieces of advice. What I really enjoyed about your viewpoint, Mario, is it's very tactical, right? There's a strategic overlay, of course, but these are practical tips that most sales managers should be able to take and start to deploy right away. So, Mario, I want to thank you for your time. I really appreciate you taking time out of your day. I know you're busy, and sharing your insights about social. I think the work that you've done, and you haven't been on social for that long, so I really commend you for really leading the way for not just your company, but I think you're one of the strongest voices we have in our industry as well. So thanks again for your time. And to the audience, remember, pay attention to these words. I want to invite guests on the show that spark debate. So if you have any questions or comments, if you disagree with what's being said, reach out to Mario, reach out to me. We'd love to engage in dialogue with you as well. I think this industry is big enough to incorporate all views, but I definitely think that there is a certain way this industry is moving, and that is going to be dictated, as Mario rightfully said, by buyers. Not us, but by our buyers. So thanks again, Mario. I appreciate your time and wishing you well. Thank you.
You bet, buddy. Thanks very much for having me.